This is my second presentation of an annual meeting, and is the first of two annual meetings that we'll be holding this year. We'd very much like to hear your views and questions. Please put them in the chat or save them until the end when you can raise your virtual hand. As said, we had two annual meetings this year, and that follows an evaluation of last year's annual meetings, which seemed to work particularly well. I just wanted to give a few reflections before I invite Helen Glenister, our CEO, to give an overview of the year. In addition to my role as chair of Isabel Hospice, I chair the Hospice of UK East of England Forum, which also then allows me to sit on the national executive of the Chairs Forum. As a result, this gives me a great insight into how our sector is performing nationally. Isabel Hospice, like many others, is providing wonderful care and support for people that are palliative or end of life. But financing this is a challenge. The boards of over 90% of hospices signed in England signed off deficit budgets, including ourselves. This is not to do with income reducing, but more about expenditure increasing for all the reasons we know about: cost of living, high inflation, etc. It's a very tricky environment that we operate in, and we are looking at ways to reduce our non-clinical costs, sweat our assets, for example, property, and develop additional income streams. The latter is being scoped by, in 2023-24, by Nick Gilbert, who's with us today, our Director of Income Generation and Marketing. I hope we'll be able to provide an update on it at our next annual meeting. All of this, sorry, somebody was giggling and it's sort of made me lose my place. So, you know, just to prove this really is live and it's not pre-recorded. All of this with the aim of producing a balanced budget and a sustainable business, allowing us to support our community in the future. I'd now like to pass over to Helen Glenister, our CEO, to give a review of the 22-23 year. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So what I'd like to do is give a review of 22-23, look at our activity and finances, and then throughout I'll drop in some plans for 23-24. So it's worth reminding ourselves of what our purpose is, and it's to provide palliative care and support for those suffering from life-limiting illnesses, as well as support for their families and carers in the boroughs of Welwyn-Hatfield, Broxbourne and East Hertfordshire. And you can see at the bottom there, we were formed on the 21st of April, 1982. So 2022 was a big year for us. We had lots of celebrations to celebrate our 40 years of existence. We had lunches, we had events, we had tea parties and so on, because we felt it was a real achievement to have existed for 40 years, right from when our founder, Isabel, last started and established the hospice. And it's also, I think, timely to include a quote by Dame Cicely Saunders, which really summarises the ethos of hospices. Dame Cicely was a nurse, she was a doctor, she was a social worker, and she was a key mover in hospice care that we know today. And what she said is that you matter because you are you. And you matter to the end of your life. We will do all we can, not only to help you die peacefully, but also to help you live until you die. And that's really important, particularly the last few words. So when should hospices get involved? Well, really, it's the moment that there is no curative treatment, which might be 3 years, 1 year, a few months, or a few days before death. But we are about the quality of life of patients and their families facing problems associated with life-limiting illnesses through the prevention and relief of suffering and supporting people to live well until they die. Our vision is outstanding palliative care for all. And we do have a strategy and we have a programs of work around empower, enable and engage. And that strategy is running from 21 to 26. What is also important for us is our values of caring, treating people with respect, being responsive, working together and being dynamic. And before I go on to talk to you about our services and clinical activity, I would just like to share Simon and Sarah's story with you that I feel so authentically captures and embodies our values at Isabel Hospice.
When you hear the words palliative care or hospice, you can't help but think the worst. That's exactly how Simon and I felt when it was suggested by his medical team that he be referred to the care of Isabel Hospice in December 2021. At this time, Simon's cancer was terminal, and because it grew on the nerves, he was in unimaginable pain. It wasn't in Simon's nature to complain, and he would only ever look on the bright side of life. So when he told me that he wanted to go ahead with the referral, I knew that he must be suffering. When Ria first came to our house, she almost instantly changed our view on what a hospice is and what it does. We spent a considerable amount of time talking in detail through all of Simon's symptoms and his diagnosis so that she could come up with a plan to manage his pain. He started the medication later that day, and no word of a lie, I felt like I was getting my husband back. Ria checked in with Simon and I every week and made tweaks to his medication as soon as we felt it wasn't working well anymore, and each time this gave him a new lease of life. Over the next 12 months, Simon spent time as an inpatient in the unit, and also he was able to enjoy long periods of time at home. His pain was so well controlled that we even managed a city break with our 2 children to Brussels, something that we didn't think would be possible because of how uncomfortable he'd become. The most important thing for Simon during that last year of his life was to spend as much quality time as possible with me and our children. Isabel Hospice made that happen. It wasn't just care for Simon, they cared for Izzy, Rupert and myself in the most unimaginable way. The very fact that I was able to stay with him a few nights a week, and during the final week of his life I stayed every night, is just not something that I ever thought would be possible. The effort that every single staff member put in order to get to know us all, especially the children, was priceless. From just chatting to us, they got to know what we liked and what kind of things we enjoyed doing together as a family, and then would suggest things we could do together at the unit. The handovers between the staff were so thorough, and it was, if something had been discussed with one person, you could be sure that the next person on the next shift would have been told all about it. Communication was seamless. Simon and I had lunch dates in the garden, we had movie afternoons, and I finally, after 20 years and numerous failed attempts, managed to watch The Shawshank Redemption all the way through. And I'm sure it was the supply of tea and biscuits from the volunteers that got me through. Simon had said that if I didn't watch it with him, I didn't stand a chance of watching it, so it had to happen. Simon and Izzy had Stranger Things afternoons with McDonald's and Nando's takeaways. Simon and Rupert watched football matches together, and as a family we enjoyed Chinese takeaways, pizza parties in the lounge with Simon's sister and his cousin. Every single person that came to visit Simon was welcomed with open arms, and the endless supply of tea, hot chocolate and hugs was priceless. Everyone at the hospice knew just how much Simon wanted to be able to watch Rupert's football matches, so his aim each week was to be well enough to come along to the game. He managed this almost every week, and for Rupert to have his daddy there watching him on the sideline was so special, especially when he scored his first goal for his team. As Simon's wife, it was incredibly comforting for me to see how well he was being cared for. I never once doubted that he would be well looked after, but I'd never appreciated just how well looked after he would be. You never think anyone can look after your loved ones the same as you would, but the staff at Isabel certainly did. Knowing that Simon wanted to be at home as much as possible, I was trained to give his medication. Again, this isn't something that I ever thought would happen. I was taken through it all so thoroughly and was left feeling really confident about it. Being a non-medical person and only really ever having put a plaster on a grazed knee or giving out some Calpol, it felt like such a big thing to me at the start. But I needn't have been nervous. The nurses were so calm, made it so easy, and made sure I had plenty of practice before going home and being in charge. Since Simon passed away last December, we've continued to receive unimaginable support from Isabel Hospice. I still have sessions with Paula, and although the children haven't seen a counsellor yet, they're always offered it, and I know that as and when they need it, it will be there for them. Each time I go back to the inpatient unit, I'm always greeted with hugs and smiles, and it instantly makes me feel comfortable. I was really worried about going back to the hospice as I thought it might be too much for me, but actually it's very comforting and calm, and that's because the atmosphere that's been created there is one of calmness and peace. I wish that people didn't have a preconception about what a hospice is, although I know we did before we experienced it firsthand. For us, Isabel Hospice was a lifeline, and not only gave us extra time with Simon, but more importantly, gave us quality time with him. It's a safe place where the main priority is the well-being of the patient. The care is on another level, and it's all so genuine and from the heart. Accepting that you're going to die is an unimaginable thing for someone to have to do, but even this felt manageable at Isabel. It's like constantly having your hand held throughout the most awful time of your life. As a family, we'll never forget what Isabel did for us, and we'll be forever grateful. And whilst I hope other families don't have to find out how amazing you are, if they do find themselves in that position, then I can't think of a better place for them to be looked after.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, a couple of people were mentioned by Sarah. Ria, at the very beginning, is one of our clinical nurse specialists who I think had first had contact with the family, and then also Paula, who's one of our bereavement counsellors. Now, I'd like to go on to talk about our services. Most of our care is delivered out in the community by our clinical nurse specialists and clinical paramedic specialists. And you can see the activities that they get involved with. In particular, they are often the first point of contact for referrals. They look after the 24/7 advice line during the day, and they attend the GP practice multidisciplinary team meetings, which are really, really important, where patients and people are discussed. Our Hospice at Home team offer specialist clinical support and personal care. And it's also, you know, it may well be that a person's preferred place of care or preferred place of death is in the home, and they help to support that. They also sometimes get involved, if you like, in rapid response when people are discharged from hospital needing very quick services to be put in place. We also have Living Well with Isabel, which is our day services, and Compassionate Communities. We're bringing these much more closer together because they do interlink. Living Well with Isabel, we can have targeted events like, for example, the Neurological Support Group. We have Feel Good Fridays, Strength and Balance, general well-being. Then we've got a slightly bigger group, which in the specialised group, which is around fatigue and breathlessness, falls prevention. It may well be, complementary therapy. And then if you look at the bottom of the triangle, which is really for everybody, it's all about compassionate neighbours, having community hubs, social meetups, thinking about advanced care planning, and start for example, having start the conversation workshops. Sarah referred to our inpatient unit, which offers specialist palliative care, symptom control, and we have 14 beds, but we're staffed up for 8. And about 30% of patients are discharged to the community. We usually, certainly over the last few months, have been achieving an occupancy well over 80%. 7 or even all of our beds are occupied. And then we usually have an average length of stay of about 10 days. Family support. So that's where Paula is working from. So counselling, we do pre and post bereavement support. Very importantly, children and teenage support, as we call it, CATS. And that can be for anybody. It doesn't have to be just children and teenagers who are, associated with adults that are in our services. Faith support, creative therapy, and this is all delivered by counsellors, but also bereavement support workers who go through a comprehensive programme before they are involved in family support. Education. Now, this is really important as well. because remember, our vision is outstanding palliative care for all. So there's quite a lot of education that we deliver, both comprehensive programs. We've got a specific project around the care homes, and we do have learning zones as well. And during 22-23, our education team delivered 174 external sessions, which were attended by 1,374 people. Now, they may well be health professionals, GPs, nurses, from many of our providers. In addition to that, the care home project, there are 81 sessions were delivered in care homes and 467 people attended. Care home project is particularly important because it's all about, you know, care homes may be the normal place of residence for people, and it's you know, they're used to being there, and that may well be their preferred place of care and death. So this programme has been all about skilling up people working in care homes so that, you know, if there are changes, which inevitably there will be, they are more able to cope with them rather than calling in emergency services, for example. Now, the stats are quite amazing, and that's in addition, we have internal education, learning and development. And I'm particularly proud of our statutory mandatory training. We need to achieve 95%, but we're usually above that, about 96% for the whole organisation, which is really impressive. Last year, partly as it was our 40th year, we delivered a conference, a clinical virtual conference, Mind Over Matter, which was international. It was attended by over 200 delegates from countries around the world, which was a real success. And we also had speakers from around the world as well. So what I hope this has demonstrated is that Isabel Hospice is more than just a building. You know, we often, the people associate the word hospice with the inpatient unit, but as you can see, we are much more than this. And really, there's no better way of sharing this message than taking the words of some of the people we support. I'm going to show you a video shortly. Chris is one of our service users, currently within our Living Well with Isabel programme, and he has kindly taken the time to share his experience with us.
I'm Chris Leake. I'm 58 years of age, and I was first diagnosed with Huntington's in 2006. It was in the family on my mum's side. So I had to sort of basically give up work in 2018, and sort of going through all the trials and traumas and tribulations of what is still a life-limiting neurological condition has been sort of really challenging. I first became aware of Isabel through Compassionate Neighbours. I was one of the first people to sort of try and get involved in that because it just seemed like a really good way to give back time and build that sort of sense of community. So I first met Christine and Carly through that, and again it just sort of seemed to make sense that people belonged, and they were able to just find an identity, find their own little niches in life. And then the life got a bit harder for me with giving up work. I'd become very socially isolated, very depressed as the Huntington's sort of starts to settle in, and I was finding myself the other things that happen are through loss of confidence and things like loss of balance and irritability, all these sorts of things. So to actually be referred into Isabel's Wellbeing Services through the HDA, the Huntington's Disease Association, has been a real eye-opener. It's filled me much more confident out and about on my feet. I'm now achieving things that I never thought I would have done before. It's just an amazing cut to come to a place where people know who you are. There's no need to put on my airs and graces on days where I really don't feel like it. I've been coming to exercise group. I've had complementary therapy again, which are all things that I never thought I would have had before. I thought they're a bit weird. And the only thing I really knew about Isabel was hospices is where people go to die. That was my experience of my grandmother. But having seen what the wellbeing services and offer, the personalities, the training, the staff, everybody is just so part of my journey, and it's just an amazing opportunity just to even talk and just give back a little bit.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that with us. I'm sure it's impacted you all as it did me. And thank you to our Living Well and Compassionate Communities teams who have supported Chris so brilliantly. I'm now going to consider our service in numbers, so to speak. These are the numbers for 22-23. Altogether, we supported 1,894 people and 1,443 patients. And you can see the stats here. There were 237 admissions to the inpatient unit, which was about 16% of our patients. And you can see the numbers supported by clinical nurse specialists, clinical paramedic specialists. But I also want to pick up really the home visits that were made, which was, over 2,800, and we had over 3,300 attendance at compassionate cafes, and lots of, more than 2,600 attendance at our Living Well. Now, these figures are more or less similar to last year, but what has increased is our family support. We had 648 people in family support, which was, an increase from 560 last year. And you can see how many were patients and how many were family members, many more family members, and how many were children there. I have got a few trends because I feel it's important to share these with you. This is cancer and stroke other diagnosis. So this is the percentage of patients that have cancer or another diagnosis. So it might be heart failure, it might be kidney failure or respiratory problems. And what you can see over the last 4 years is a trend. Back in March 2020, so that was, finishing that year, we were about 54% cancer and 46% other diagnosis. Over the last 4 years, there has been a change, and we're seeing more cancer and a less percentage of didn't present. It's still there. We had a slight technical hitch there, I think.
I think we're back now, Helen. We've got the slides back up.
Brilliant, thank you. And then the other trend that I wanted to share with you is the average days from referral to death, which, as you can see, over the last 4 years has been increasing. Now, going on to the finances, the all-important finances. So what I have included in this table is the income, expenditure, and the situation at the end of the year, whether it's surplus or deficit. So what has happened in last year, we were slightly less than the previous year in terms of income. Back in 2020, we had some money from the government, which helped us. But you can see here, the expenditure has gone up over certainly over the last 3 years, and that's evident in this year as well. And we did achieve a surplus of 479,000. So not as good as previous years for very reasons, but it's we obviously, this is something that we need to keep an eye on. And as Terry mentioned, most hospitals have agreed a deficit budget for this financial year, and we have, as our board has agreed a deficit budget also. What we're trying to reduce that deficit each year so that we get into balance. So just looking at the distribution of the income, the 33% came from the NHS and 29% from fundraising, but also it's the same percentage that came from legacies, and legacies are really important for us. Retail, it was 6%. Remember, it's the profit that comes from the retail company that comes over to the charity. And in terms of expenditure, we're always very keen to look at the the amount that is spent on patient services. And 61% was spent on patient services last year, which comparison with others is a good figure. Obviously, some of the support services are also supporting patient services as well. But anyway, we always do look at that. Now, on this slide, we have some of the events that happened over the year. You can see an ABBA tribute. I think in the first picture there was Muddy Mayhem and all sorts of marathons, etc. And then Janice Penman, who's one of our clinical nurse specialists, to celebrate 20 years of being with Isabel Hospice, decided to fundraise by climbing a mountain a month. So she's just got a few more to go, but she started this in the last financial year. Just a little bit about legacies. As you can see, they are really important to us, and they support, 1 in 7 patients. And without that kindness and generosity of our supporters, we could not do what we do best. Leaving money in a legacy to a charity can reduce the amount of inheritance tax that people pay. And all gifts are important to us. And what this slide does is shares with you the range of gifts that we received over 22-23. And we're incredibly grateful to our supporters for those gifts. So thinking about the future, well, at Isabel, Christmas has started. We're already promoting all our Christmas events, and we've set ourselves a target of raising 120,000 for hospice care this Christmas. So a number of these are around. Do sign up for them if you would like to. Turning to Isabel Hospice trading. We have 15 shops and eBay operations, and the income from all our shops and eBay was 2.7 million, which exceeded the budget for that year, which was really, really pleasing. And after expenditure, the profit goes towards the funding of, for example, 14,000 nursing hours. Certainly had some highlights. We launched the Tons of Care sustainability initiative, and we have won some awards over the year. So the Hertfordshire Heroes Green Award in January 2022. I mean, what our Tons of Care is all about, trying to save items from going to landfill and then selling them on through our 15 shops and eBay store, so that we can get money and use that for our charity. We were also shortlisted for Outstanding Charity Retailer, Best Shop Window and Young Volunteer of the Year for the Charity Retailers Awards in 2022. And the other thing we've done is to trial new events and pop-up shops. And an example of that is the King's Cross Charity Supermarket, which generated £4,500 over 2 days. So lots of exciting things going on there. And in this year, we have opened a new shop, which is in Welling, and we did that 4 weeks ago, it's more of a boutique-y shop, so a bit different to our other charity shops. We've had a number of EDI a number of projects going on, which I want to just share some highlights with you over the year. In terms of EDI, so that's equity, diversity and inclusion. This is a term to, really think about our policies and how we work, our programs that promote representation and participation of different groups of individuals, including people of different ages, races, ethnicities, abilities, disabilities, genders, religions, cultures, sexual orientations. And it's all about belonging. That's the overlap, really. And why is this important to us? Well, it's really vital for us to reach, diverse patients, families and communities. It's also, supporting our staff and volunteer recruitment campaign and retention. And thirdly, it's to broaden our supporter base and increase revenue for the hospice. And this is all supporting the overall vision of Isabel Hospice, outstanding palliative care for all. So it's really, we feel that this is really important. Our journey so far, well, we wanted to see where we were with EDI, so we undertook a survey. We've had awareness training of staff and volunteers. We set up a forum, we have a strategy, and we have an action plan that is going forwards. Now, thinking about frailty, frailty we've been involved with for some time. We've had compassionate communities and compassionate neighbours. It might be just helpful just to consider what frailty is. It's often related to the ageing process, but not always, and really refers to a person's mental, physical and social resilience and the ability to bounce back and recover from events like illness, injury or change in the environment. Now, Isabel Hospice has already been doing some work in this area for some time through our Compassionate Communities programme, but we're delighted to receive funding from Hospice UK for a project that has started in this financial year. And this is with our partners. As you can see, it includes Age UK, Hertfordshire Independent Living Service, Hills and Hearts Wise. And really, it's all about having a programme, getting people referred to the project, which is running at the moment just in Welwyn and surrounding areas. And we'll see how that goes and then may extend. It's all about giving confidence. It's having a programme around frailty and how to reduce the risk. And as you can see on the right side of the slide, there's lots of events that are going on. Turning to property, I don't think our board has had a meeting without having some discussion about property. We are looking at some changes. So what is driving the need for change? Well, at the moment, we have 3 properties in Welwyn. Head office at Milan House, which we own. We also own freehold of the inpatient unit, and Hall Grove is leased. But we do have some inefficiencies because, for example, eBay is based in Hall Grove. So all the stuff that's going to be sold on eBay needs to be transported from the warehouse at our head office. Also, when we've done a census and, all the desk spaces that we have are not fully utilised. And really the office is not configured to hybrid working. We've got an added we need to think ahead because the lease of Living Well expires in 2026. So do we want to continue or do we want to do something different? And then in the inpatient unit, which is of course absolutely lovely, but we've had some younger people. Our ensuite accommodation only consists of the WC and washhand basin. We only have one shower there in the whole unit. So we're thinking about, how can we update our existing ensuite arrangements, and we have some underused and utilised space. So what are we wanting to do? Ideally, we'd like to develop the inpatient unit and extend it by having a first floor, bring our Living Well and community teams together with the IPU people, because at the moment some of the community teams are in head office. Living Well is at Hall Grove, and then of course we have IPU. That will be better for patients because it will give more flexibility. So at the moment, the therapists particularly are in the inpatient unit in the mornings and go over to Living Well in the afternoons. But there might be more flexibility, although if they're all in one place. We have submitted a pre-application, which was received a positive response, and we do hope to submit a full application by the end of October for these changes. We will then need to raise the monies to take that forward. But first of all, it's all about getting the planning permission to make changes. Thinking about our head office, Milan House, well, it's under offer. So a buyer has made an offer which has been accepted, subject to planning for residential use. So they have got to get permission to change Milan House, probably knock it down and build new flats, etc. The planners were happy with the pre-app, but they did say that they wanted it market tested to see if the Milan House could be used for employment purposes, and that has been going on for a year. We still have a long stop date of 25th of July, so if it hasn't gone through, that is the time when things will absolutely stop. Because the Milan House is under offer, we have been looking at alternative accommodation. The plan is to try and bring trading operations and eBay and some head office staff together. We've already visited looked at 12 properties and visited 2, and one is being explored much further. Moving on to our people. Very aptly, it is Hospice Care Week this week, and the theme is We Are Hospice Care, which is all about highlighting the incredible people behind the care and how essential each and every one of our people are in continuing the work of Isabel Hospice. Our people are so important, and we just couldn't do it without our people, both staff and volunteers. And at the end of March, we had 525 volunteers who gave, we estimate, almost 82,000 hours. And what that equates to is over £853,000 based on living wage. So our people are so important to us. We do have reward and recognition schemes which run quarterly, and here are some of the teams and the individuals that have won the awards over the year. They've been nominated by colleagues. There's a panel, cross-organisation panel that consists and identifies the winners of awards. I also want to say a very big thank you to our chair, Terry Philpott, and all of our trustees who give their time and to, really in terms of all the meetings that they attend and provide us with very good governance. So helping us with strategy, helping us scrutinising at times, stretching us at time, providing support. And an example of that is Ian Ellis has been helping us with health and safety recently. And it's all about thinking about the hospice for the future, which is what the property discussion has been about. But before I hand back to Terry for our Q&A session, I would like to leave you on a positive note. As mentioned, this week is Hospice Care Week. And I'm now going to share with you this video of our people celebrating Hospice Care Week.
I'm Philpott, the Director of Services at Isabel Hospice, and I'm celebrating Hospice Care Week.
And we're celebrating Hospice Care Week. Happy Hospice Care Week
from all at the inpatient unit at Isabel Hospice. Hello, my name is Helen Glenister and I'm the Chief Executive of Isabel Hospice, and I'm celebrating Hospice Care Week.
Happy Hospice Care Week from the Supporter Care team.
Hi, I'm Jerry Garman, working down at the Isabel Hospice as a housekeeper. I'd like to wish you all a happy Hospice Care Week.
Hello, my name is Nick Gilbert and I am the Director of Income Generation and Marketing here at Isabel Hospice, and I'm celebrating Hospice Care Week.
My name's Cammy. I'm the corporate fundraiser for Isabel Hospice and I am celebrating Hospice Care Week.
Happy Hospice Care Week from the Learning, Development, Education team here at Isabel Hospice.
We are the family support team from the Isabel Hospice and we are celebrating Hospice Care Week.
I'm Isabel, I'm one of the sisters of the Isabel Hospice inpatient unit, wishing you all a very good Hospice week.
Tia Hopley, I'm the People Director at Isabel Hospice and I'm celebrating Hospice Care Week.
The Hospice Care Week.
Welcome to Isabel Hospice's Donation Centre. Wishing you all a happy Hospice Care Week. Woo!
Thank you, Helen, and what a great way to finish, all that sort of burst of enthusiasm at the end. So well done, and thank you very much. So this is now your opportunity to get involved. Ask any questions that you'd like. Either put them in the chat, put your hand up. I'll come to you, and we'll answer them. So we've got a question from the looks like the Caroline Baines team. There's a whole load of people in that room. So, who wants to ask the question?
I'm going to pass you to Cheryl.
Okay.
There goes
Hi, Cheryl.
Hello, Terry. Just a question regarding the property and the move, which is obviously a huge subject which we've all been working hard at. I'm just wondering, has any consideration been given to the possibility of a brand new start, similar to Arthur Rankin Cambridge, Priscilla Bacon in Norfolk, where we would have an inpatient unit, warehouse, the whole kit and caboodle in one place. So obviously a capital appeal would be required. I just wonder if any consideration has been given to that, since we're lucky enough to have a freehold asset, which would be some of our seed money.
Okay, yeah, really good question. I'm going to pass back to Helen for that one, if I may, please.
Yes, the board had an away day early on and looked at all options, and that included a new build, if you like, Cheryl, and I think the preferred option would be to have it all have everything together. And then the next option was really to have retail in a separate place to the hospice where care and support was provided and all of that. So, and then the board took the decision, and they felt that the best way forwards at this time was to have to do what we can to extend the inpatient unit that we've got at the moment. So we did do an options appraisal, but that was felt to be the best way forward. And I think it's important to say that although we're going to get, planning permission, you don't necessarily do it, but we want to make sure that we do have it, because there are some very important options there. For example, increasing the parking space. But all of that was an option that was considered, but at this time it was felt to be the appropriate way forwards was with development of our own inpatient unit.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Any other questions? I know there was one in the chat, which I'm going to pass over to Charlotte, which was there were 14,000 hours of nursing care as a result of the contribution from retail. What is that in cash terms, Charlotte?
That's about £392,000, Terry, which also answers the other question in the chat. So that is the profit minus the staff and the labour costs and all of the rental costs that we pay on our 15 shops and the buildings that we're in. good question about the retail justification of having 4 shops in Welwyn Garden City. So we're not like traditional retailers. Our stock isn't the same in every single shop that you go to. You're not going to have the same black jumper and the same black cardigan. The donations we get through the doors are really unique and they're different every day. So that's why we can justify having shops that are so close together. The 2 shops in Welwyn Garden City, they are consistently in the top 5 shops every week, so they perform really well. The shop in Haldens is a real community hub, so they really cater to the local schools and the local community in that area. And the Welwyn Village shop is a new concept for us. It's ladies wear only. It's a boutique shop. And in its opening week, it took a lot more sales than some of our other shops because that was something that was completely new and needed in that area.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte. And while I've got you on the screen, can I ask you another question? What plans do you have to open more shops?
Yeah, we've got loads of plans to open new shops. We've got some real ambitions to introduce pre-loved shopping to our local community in Eastern Hertfordshire because it's something that's really close to our heart in terms of supporting the circular economy whilst providing those precious nursing hours that the hospice provides for our patients and service users. And the ambition is to get to around 27 shops by the end of the next 5 years. But obviously property is very volatile, so we'll do the best we can to hit that number.
Okay, right. Thank you, Charlotte. I'm going to come back to Helen for my next question. How are we planning to pay for all these new buildings and all this property work, Helen?
Okay, good question. So obviously the sale of, well, there's 2 bits to this, I think. From the inpatient unit, we would want to have a capital appeal for that, and Nick is doing doing an assessment of what might be possible with a capital appeal. In terms of a replacement building for Milan House, so to speak, we would ideally like to buy and using the resources from Milan House to do that. Although I don't think it's going to be quite like selling a house where you one lot move out one day and the others move in on the same day. It's just not like that, I don't think, with sort of more commercial property because it needs to be fitted out. So we have so it will be from the sale of Milan House and using some of our reserves until we get, if we need to double run, for example, with 2 buildings. And Claire, our Director of Finance and Resources, our Interim Director of Finance and Resources, who I think is on the call, and it's probably day 6 or so, is one of her key priority areas is to look at options for us and what is the best way to think about using our reserves and also using our investments. Claire, I don't know whether you'd like to introduce yourself and anything to add.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you see
me?
Yes, we can. Hi, Claire.
Hello, it's lovely to hear all this news about the hospice and the summary of last year. It's great. Yes, as Helen said, this is my 6th day, so I'm kind of starting to understand things a little bit and looking forward to getting involved with the detail of the property transactions.
Okay, thank you, Claire. I've got another question that's been posed, which is I think I'm going to pass this one over to Caroline, which is we've seen the importance of volunteers within the hospice. How can we encourage more people to get involved with our volunteering schemes?
So thank you for the question for starters. In terms of encouraging more volunteers, again, we reach out to you who are viewing with your family and friends. That's a very key stream that we've been focusing on this year as part of our volunteering strategy. We also wish to reach into those people who are about to retire or perhaps considering reducing their hours. And the 3rd strand for this year's strategy is to consider those wishing to return to the workplace. because we're very mindful that perhaps parents who have now got children at school, they might want to regain and build their confidence and skills. And we have a host of opportunities here at the hospice, be it customer facing, patient facing, or supporting our operations teams to reach out and hopefully find the right fit. So whatever skills people have, please do send them our way. volunteer.office@isabelhospice.org is our address, and 01707 382 500 option 4. They're all laughing in the conference room here. Sounds like what does it sound like? One of those appeals, doesn't it? But you're our best ambassadors, so please help us. Also, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Caroline. That's great. Nick Gilbert, I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. What are the plans to increase the brand profile of Isabel within the local community, especially through corporate partnerships and collaborations?
Thank you very much, Terry, and thank you very much. Good to see everyone here on Hospice Care Week. That is a good question. One of the areas that I'm working with the head of fundraising is looking at very much at the corporate partnerships area. We think there's a massive opportunity there that we haven't absolutely maximised here at Isabel Hospice. So hopefully over the next year, we've got a list, potential corporates, and if anybody has any connections to any of the corporates, please do let us know. But at the present moment, we've got a list, and we're going to work through that list and try to encourage them to support Isabel Hospice. But we know that is an absolutely there's a massive opportunity here in East Herts, especially. And we've done some work actually over the last year to identify some of those key companies just in the whole of Hertfordshire. And there was a few, quite a good lot right at the top of that list that are actually based in our very area. So we have them on our earmarked, and we hope we'll be reaching out to them. In terms of reaching out our brand at Isabel Hospice, we've got a good marketing team, which is overseen by Katie O'Sullivan and Charlotte Greenwood. And we're trying to look at different avenues of actually not just are we getting our brand out there, but actually how are we actually engaging with them? Are they seeing our brand? Are they connecting to us? Are they making a donation? Are they joining our volunteers or our recruitment? And obviously, are they coming on board and signing up potentially for a referral onto our clinical work? So we've got a strategy which we're working way through, which will see our brand profile hopefully increase, but for the right reasons across East Hertfordshire.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Andy, I'm going to come to you for this next one. How would the new IPU cope with parking wise with increased staff numbers, the increased use of living well attendees and staff, CNS team, and of course patients and their visitors once all on site? So essentially, how are you going to deal with the parking?
So that's another great question, isn't it? And there has been a census that has been done recently that has enabled us to look at how many people are moving between, well, in and out of the IPU building. With the new plans of IPU, we have increased our car parking spaces, and we have also managed to have 15 parking permits from the QE2 hospital, which we will be using, and we will be looking at other areas of car parking that we could use. But effectively, with the new plans, the car parking has increased to allow this to happen. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Andy. Charlotte, I'm going to come back to you for this one. So this is a retail contribution question. So 21-22, the retail contribution was 8%. This year it's 6%. What is the plan going forward to increase this percentage? And also, what else can you do as the window into our service so that this can be signposted to Isabel Hospice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not brilliant at mental arithmetic on the spot, but I have tried to work it out, and I think the contribution that I've worked out is that we're at 14.5%, the 392,000 into the 2.7 million. Last year, I don't know the percentage, but I think we roughly took around 400k in contribution, but because it was COVID, we had a lot of COVID grants. So we had the retail, hospitality, leisure grants from the government, which obviously gave us funding to support the fact that we couldn't trade. We also had a lot of discounted rents and rates because of COVID as well. So we had a lot of additional support that went into our income line, which obviously wasn't anniversaried this year. So this year is truly because of the hard work of our whole retail team, really pushing that income line and looking at our cost base to achieve the number that we did. And the 354k that we achieved this year was against a budget of 250. So we pretty much gave an extra 100k in profit to the hospice. In terms of the windows into our service, yes, absolutely. Our shops are our most public-facing outlets in the hospice, and we really want to make sure that we align the shops with our cause as well. So it's Amazon Prime Day today, so we've ordered a lot of digital photo frames to go and sit in our shops on the till counters, and that will have a lot of messages about the hospice scrolling through, so that when they're at the till and they're browsing the shops, they can see those messages about the great work that we do, about compassionate neighbours, all of the services that we provide with the hospice at home and inpatient unit, living well, all of those things. So we're trying to be a little bit more less paperless and go digital, and we would welcome any ideas on how we can support that.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Charlotte. It's a really good initiative. So that's really good. Andy, I'm going to come back to you for this one. With dementia cases increasing, how are the hospice preparing for any potential uplifts in services because of this need?
Okay, so we do provide care to patients with dementia in our IPU and at end of life and through our community services already. We provide the advice and education on symptom management in care homes, and our care home educator also delivers education in dementia awareness and end of life across East and North Herts. Our community teams also liaise with our social prescribers, and these are people that work in GP practices who can then advise on services around East and Hertfordshire in regard to things like dementia cafes and social groups. And as you say, we have seen an increase in looking after people, having patients that are referred to us with dementia as a primary diagnosis from 7% in 21 to 9% in 22. But because we only capture primary diagnosis on referral, there will be more patients that are actually receiving our care who have dementia as a secondary illness. And of course, the other thing that we will be looking at is when we review our services, which we often do, we will be looking at whether or not we need to have a specific clinical nurse specialist, which we had before, an admiral nurse. But that is dependent on whether or not the data proves that we actually need that nurse in place. But effectively, we are caring for patients with dementia and signposting them to services if they require it.
Okay, thank you, Andy. This next one, I'm going to come to Lydia. Staff and volunteer retention feels and appears unstable. Why is this? How is the people strategy going to become front and center in people's minds and feel much more inclusive? So I guess there's two elements to that. I'll let you pick that one out.
Thank you for that. That's a very good question for staff and volunteers, which are obviously just as important as each other. In terms of staff retention, our turnover rates are rather low and consistently have been below the NHS and other comparable organisations. So that's good and reassuring. However, we do have particular challenges recruiting staff within the clinical areas as there are a national shortage of nurses. However, we've got some good positive strategies to try and hire new nurses, including one-off £2,000 bonuses for any new nurses in our organisation. And we're doing other things to try and boost our recruitment of clinical staff. Furthermore, we're looking at reward across the organisation. So we've recently had a pay review to look at how competitive we are against other organisations. In terms of volunteer strategy, it's a little bit of a different picture. There's some areas within the hospice that we have less issues, I think, recruiting and retaining volunteers in other areas. So, for example, clinical, we find it easier to recruit and retain volunteers than we do for retail. And because of that, myself and Charlotte Greenwood and Maddie and Caroline and other members of the team are working specifically on the project of retail recruitment for volunteers, because this part of the market we know is nationally tricky. So we've done things like we've incorporated an expenses process whereby whereby volunteers very clearly are entitled to expenses in line with policy. And hopefully that will also help us to be more inclusive, as we are, for example, offering reimbursement of lunch expenses for volunteers who work a full day. So this is hopefully going to be a more inclusive process. And last but not least, what Helen was talking about before that's so important is EDI, that's equity, diversity and inclusion, and that covers every part of people and volunteer strategy, and that really should help us to look in a more creative way at recruiting and retaining diverse staff and volunteers. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Lydia. Okay, are there any other questions? I don't know if there's another message coming through on the chat. This was in my warm-up bit, so it's coming back to Nick Gilbert. Are there any ideas in the pipeline for alternative income generation?
Thank you, Terry. Thanks for the question. Yeah, there are definitely. You know, we can't rely solely on fundraising and retail, and obviously some of the 30% that we get from the NHS and the ICB in terms of funding. We are looking at other alternative income generation opportunities, and very much looking at what other hospices are doing at the same time. So other hospices will do different ideas. So it could be from care. We've got some doing coffee shops. We've got some doing cleaning services. And what we want to start with at Isabel Hospice is what we know and what we do best, which is healthcare. So we're looking at those sorts of avenues in terms of income generation to establish first and foremost. I remember when I first started looking down this route, many people were questioning whether we should do doggy daycare and all sorts of random ways that we can do income generation. And whilst yes, it could bring in some income, we've got to stand by what we are as an organisation, which is healthcare. So listen, I can't speak at the present moment because actually, to be honest, they're still up in the air in terms of the different avenues. But I'm working very closely with the trustees, and hopefully over the next year, we'll be able to tell you more. It's at least one of our first of our start of our income generation. I should just say that we're looking at different avenues. So it's not just one thing that we'll look down to, but we'll have loads of different avenues for income generation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. So you heard it here first. No doggy daycare, but lots of other opportunities. Are there any other questions anybody else would like to raise? No? Well, thank you very much to Helen for the main part of the presentation. Thank you to everybody for your contribution to the hospice. And I've noticed there are some people that are not staff and volunteers, but are supporters on the call. I know Duncan Wallace, who's the mayor of Buntingford, was with us. He's just dropped off. And I think Sally Burton, former High Sheriff of Hertfordshire, is with us as well. So thank you to you. Thank you to all the supporters as well. And if you've enjoyed it so much, we have another one of these next week. You can come along and join us again. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.